the front and at home.
The other thing I want you to understand is this, that it didn't cost the nation one penny to integrate lunch counters. It didn't cost the nation one penny to guarantee the right to vote. But now we are dealing with issues that cannot be solved without the nation spending billions of dollars and undergoing a radical redistribution of economic power.
Yes. All labor has dignity.
Yes.
But you're doing another thing. You are reminding not only Memphis, but you are reminding the nation that it is a crime for people to live in this rich nation and receive starvation wages.
America's opportunity to help bridge the gulf between the haves and the have-nots. And the question is whether America will do it. There's nothing new about poverty. What is new is that we now have the techniques and the resources to get rid of poverty. And the real question is whether we have the will. At the very same time that America refused to give the Negro any land, through an act of Congress, our government was giving away millions of acres of land in the West and the Midwest, which meant that it was willing to undergird its white peasants from Europe with an economic floor. But not only did they give the land, they built land-grant colleges with government money to teach them how to farm. Not only that, they provided county agents to further their expertise in farming. Not only that, they provided low interest rates in order that they could mechanize their farms. Not only that, today many of these people are receiving millions of dollars in federal subsidies not to farm, and they are the very people telling the black man that he ought to lift himself by his own bootstraps. And this is what we are faced with. And this is the reality. Now, when we come to Washington in this campaign, we are coming to get our check. And I come here tonight and plead with you. Believe in yourself and believe that you're somebody. And as I said to a group last night, nobody else can do this for us. No document can do this for us. No Lincolnian Emancipation Proclamation can do this for us. No Kennysonian or Johnsonian Civil Rights Bill can do this for us. If the Negro is to be free, he must move down into the inner resources of his own soul and sign with the pen and ink of self-assertive manhood his own Emancipation Proclamation. Don't let anybody take your manhood. Be proud of our heritage. As somebody said earlier tonight, we don't have anything to be ashamed of. Somebody told a lie one day. They couched it in language. They made everything black, ugly, and evil. Look in your dictionary and see the synonyms of the word black. There's always something degrading and low and sinister. Look at the word white. It's always something pure, high, and clean. But I want to get the language right tonight. I want to get the language so right that everybody here will cry out, yes, I'm black, I'm proud of it, I'm black and beautiful.
What is the relationship between this and the reality of the Negro masses?
Well, to leave Martin out of it for a moment. Martin's very rare, very great man. Martin's rare for two reasons. Partly because just because he is. And because he's a real Christian, and he really believes in nonviolence. He's arrived at something in himself, which permits him, allows him to do it. And he still has great moral authority in the South. He has none whatever in the North. Poor Martin has gone through God knows what kind of hell to awaken the American conscience. But Martin has reached the end of his rope. There's some things Martin can't do. Martin's only one man. Martin can't solve the nation's central problem by himself. There are lots of people, lots of black people I mean now, who don't go to church no more and don't listen to Martin, you know. And who anyway are themselves produced by civilization, which has always glorified violence, unless the Negro had the gun. So that Martin is undercut by the performance of the country. The country is only concerned about nonviolence if it seems that I'm going to get violent. But it's not worried about nonviolence if it's some Alabama sheriff.
Jim, what do you see deep in the recesses of your own mind as the future of our nation? And I ask that question in that way because I think that the future of the Negro and the future of the nation are linked.
They're indissoluble.
Yeah. Now, what do you see? Are you essentially optimistic or pessimistic? And I really don't want to put words in your mouth because what I really want to find out is what you really believe.
Well, I'm both glad and sorry you asked me that question. I'll do my best to answer it. I can't be a pessimist because I'm alive. To be a pessimist means that you have agreed that human life is an academic matter. So I'm supposed to be an optimist. I'm supposed to believe that we can survive whatever we must survive. But the Negro in this country, the future of the Negro in this country is precisely as bright or as dark as the future of the country. It is entirely up to the American people and our representatives. It is entirely up to the American people whether or not they're going to face and deal with and embrace this stranger whom they maligned so long. What white people have to do is try to find out in their own hearts why it was necessary to have a nigger in the first place. Because I'm not a nigger. I'm a man. But if you think I'm a nigger, it means you need it. The question you got to ask yourself, the white population of this country has got to ask itself, North and South, because it's one country, and for a Negro, there's no difference in the North and the South. There's just a difference in the way they castrate you. But the fact of the castration is the American fact. If I'm not the nigger here, and you invented him, you the white people invented him, then you got to find out why.
Well,
and the future of the country depends on that, whether or not it's able to ask that question.
As a Negro and as an American, I can only hope that America has the strength and the capacity,
the moral strength,
to ask and answer that question in affirmative and constructive ways.
To face that question.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ken. No, no.
Good afternoon, everyone. Just wanted to alert you that we will be starting in just a minute or two. Wanted to make sure that those individuals who will be speaking this afternoon have actually arrived and are in the audience at this point. So we do thank you for being here. And as I said, we'll be getting started in just a moment. Thank you. And again, thank you for waiting patiently. Good afternoon.
Talking about blueprint. Is that where we are?
Ahmed, could you help me out here? I think we have someone who's speaking. We'll just mute everyone for a moment here. Thank you. Again, good afternoon and good and happy Martin Luther King Day to all of you on this bright and sunny day. Certainly, at least in our hearts. And of course, it is good to be here with all of you. This afternoon, we're going to do a couple of things, and I'm hoping that you will enjoy being in community and in solidarity with one another as we do that. For any legacy to be considered meaningful, it must over time speak to both of our hearts and our heads. Its relevance comes not from just the past memories of the work that was or has been done, but it also must consider current applications to our lives today and the potential for its impact on our wants, our needs, and our aspirations for tomorrow. So today, you have joined us as we have set aside some time to consider the role of liberation theology within faith in its historical context, as well as its message, meaning, and relevance to today's society, to this America. But before we get to this, there are some thought-provoking and enlightening discussions that I'm sure we will have with our distinguished panel, brought to you by the concerned clergy. And so that what we'd like to do is hear now from our mayor, or in the mayor's stead, I believe that there's someone online who would like to bring greetings from the city of Stamford. And so is either Mayor Caroline Simmons here, or the Chief of Staff, Bridget Fox. Please unmute yourself, and we'll be happy to hear from you. Okay, well, we will not delay. It is 2:34. We have a full program. And once either the mayor or Chief of Staff Fox joins us, we'll allow them an opportunity to speak and to address the crowd. So again, thank you so much for that. But as we move forward, we do have some community news that we would love to share with you. And the first of it, Ahmed, if you could put up the slide. Yes, the Ferguson Library, the South End branch of the Ferguson Library, has something that's very important that will be showing until the 22nd of January. We would like all of you, and Mrs. Anderson would love all of you to come down to the South End branch of the Ferguson Library for a display on Dr. King's life. It's meant for all ages, and we do expect to have many gather to see this wonderful display, so that all are available to come down to that particular location. You will not, I swear to you, you will not be disappointed in what the library has put forward for us with that. In addition, with our community news.
Welcome to Ferguson South End Branch Story Walk. This year, we have a story walk of Dr. Martin Luther King, the big Welcome to Ferguson South End Branch Story Walk. This year, we have a story walk of Dr. Martin Luther King, the big words, Martin's big words. Please enjoy. As you can see, this is a wonderful way to exercise your mind and exercise your body with a story walk from Ferguson Library. And at the end of the walk, we'd love for you to send us a picture or comments on how you enjoyed the story walk. Mrs. Anderson, the supervisor of the Ferguson Library.
Thank you, Mrs. Anderson, and thank you for all of the fantastic work that you do at the South End branch of the library, which I believe now is in year 52 or starting year 51 or 52 of the Ferguson branch in the South End. Such a vital and vibrant part of our community. With that, we would like to do something that we annually do. We have the CEO of Person to Person with us this afternoon, as she was last year when we celebrated virtually. And there's an important piece of ensuring that our young people get the opportunity for education beyond high school, but into college and to starting careers. Person to Person plays a role in that. And so I welcome Nancy Coughlin, the CEO of Person to Person. Nancy, I know you have great news for us today.
Thank you, Michael. And welcome everybody. Thank you for including us again this year. Person to Person was formed in 1968 when Reverend Robert Nelson Back, rector of St. Luke's Parish, who'd been in seminary with Dr. King, called upon his parishioners to have the same courage Dr. King had in choosing a path of fighting poverty and injustice through nonviolent direct action. More than 50 years later, Person to Person strives to honor the legacy of Dr. King and his work, including the Poor People's Campaign, through programs designed to create equitable access to economic security. Each year, Person to Person selects a college senior who demonstrates a commitment to the ideals espoused by Dr. King to receive the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Scholarship. I'd like to thank Allison Gagliardi, owner of Troy Insurance, for fully funding this scholarship for 4 years. Our committee this year did not hesitate in selecting Michael Hernandez to receive this year's scholarship. Michael's well known in the Stanford community for his leadership and his advocacy. He's a senior at the University of Connecticut in Storrs, pursuing a dual degree in political science and economics in the honors program, with minors in English and urban and community studies. He served as the student body president, founder of the Undergraduate Political Science Association, vice president of the Connecticut Young Democrats, and a regular contributor to the Undergraduate Political Review, the Business Review, and the student newspaper. Off campus, Michael has worked on various political campaigns, the US Census, and the Stanford Housing Affordability Study. He organized fellow students in a years-long campaign to lobby the state capitol to pass the historic Afford to Dream Act. After graduation, Michael hopes to pursue a master's degree in public policy, and we look forward to seeing all that Michael accomplishes in his future. It's my pleasure to award Michael Hernandez the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Scholarship for his commitment to social justice and public policy. And Michael is here to say a word to accept this award.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Nancy, for your kind introduction. It's an honor to receive the Person to Person's Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Scholarship and to share this moment of reflection with all of you. For those who don't know me, I'm a student at UConn and a proud West Hill High School graduate. I'm based in Stanford, and you might have seen me yelling, "Fill out the census," on the back of a pickup truck 2 summers ago. My journey in public service began in the space of activism when I was a senior in high school. That was a time when immigrant communities were under attack, including my friends, some of my friends, and myself. I was undocumented at the time. My friends and I used our study hall period to organize a rally. We got 100 people to show up outside of City Hall, but we had no idea what we were doing. But we were familiar with Dr. King's work. Up to that point, Dr. King had been a distant figure, but we learned from him to seek change peacefully and in good faith. After high school, I went on to work with Connecticut Students for a Dream on the Afford to Dream Act. We mobilized immigrant youth to the Capitol, and in 2018, the law passed. And as a result, all students in Connecticut are now eligible for financial aid, regardless of their immigration status. I look forward to a future in public service, and I invite all of you to continue remembering the legacy of Dr. King, from his activism to his commitment to equity. Thank you.
Michael, we thank you for all of your hard work. And Nancy has listed off a lot of things that you're involved with. So that obviously you have too much time on your hands. But we applaud you for all that you do. And notably, you mentioned that people were under attack, that you felt you and others quite clearly were under attack. Unfortunately, the work of Dr. King and the legacy that lives here lives on because we are still under attack in many ways. And that's what today is about. I'm hoping that some of our distinguished guests will actually speak to that later on. But thank you so much for your efforts and your continued work with other young people to make our society a great one. What we do have at this point is also another group of scholars that are sponsored by the committed members of the 100 Black Men of Stanford. So Ahmed, if you could put up that particular screen, I will briefly mention who they are. So this past year, the 100 Black Men of Stanford awarded several scholarships to students, as we have done in the past. Our president, Josiah Lindsay, is actually on this particular video or on this call with us. But as you can see, we have a representation of students throughout Stanford, also Norwalk and Bridgeport. Last year, we provided scholarships to students who are attending now, Brandeis University, Penn State, Howard University, University of Southern Connecticut, and also the University of Connecticut at Storrs. So you can see some of the young people who are listed here. Two of them that we will mention, Jasant Holly, who is known here in Stanford. He just went off this month to Penn State. And he is this year's William S. Callion Scholar here in Stanford for public service. Deshaun Williams, who is at Howard University, is this year's scholar for the Dudley N. Williams Scholarship from the 100 Black Men. Both of those scholarships are for $4,000 each. Raven Said is at Brandeis University. Zachary Frateroli, who is an AITE graduate, is at Harrisburg University. Layla Jordan is at Southern Connecticut State. And Melissa Ramirez Rivera from Norwalk is at the University of Connecticut, as is Claudia Lucien, a well-known Stanford student who has entered into medical studies, preparing herself for that particular career. So we're really extremely proud and pleased that there are so many students. What we also would like to tell you is that if there are students and parents or educators out there, please be aware that the 100 Black Men Scholarship is available online at our website, which is www.100bos or .com, forgive me, and we will put that into the chat, but we will be taking applications through April 1st. So thank you. You can take that down at this point on that. Lastly, within the other community news that we have is that there is big news happening in the not-for-profit world and within education and the Stanford Cradle to Career program. A new CEO or president of Cradle to Career has been appointed. Bridget Fox has moved on to the mayor's staff as chief of staff, but we do have Edith Presley here, who is a Stanford resident and attended Stanford schools. And so Edith, we would like you to come on and speak with us just a bit about your new role.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am very happy to be here. Thank you, Mr. Hyman, for such a gracious introduction and an opportunity for me to say hello to the folks today. My name is Edith Presley. Some of you may know me from being an administrator and a teacher in Stanford Public Schools. When Michael was giving his acceptance speech of his person-to-person scholarship, I was here rooting. I'm also a Stanford Public School West Hill alum, class of 1997, and it feels so great to be a part of the community. I too had the benefit of being a person-to-person scholarship recipient, so it really feels great to be a part of a community, to see it come full circle, and to now use my time, talents, and gifts to contribute as president of Stanford Cradle to Career. I don't want to take a lot of time this afternoon, but I do want to draw everyone's attention to Stanford Cradle to Career's website. It's very simple, stanfordcradletocareer.org. And there you'll see two very exciting events that we have coming up. It's part of our annual convening, and that'll happen next month. On February 10th, from 6 to 8 p.m., we have our virtual roundtables, and those consist of presentations for our youth and for our caregivers. And then the very next day, on February 11th, we have an opportunity for community partners and folks who want to learn more about the work to also log on to our virtual roundtable from 9 until noon. So we're really excited. Our work centers around really taking care of all Stanford's children from cradle to career, with emphasis on early childhood, early literacy, and bridging our students from K-12 education to their post-secondary or college and career goals. So thank you again for the opportunity. And I just want to leave you all with my very famous favorite MLK quote. And it's one about progress and it's one about movement. And it says simply, if you can't fly, then run. If you can't run, then walk. If you can't walk, then crawl. But by all means, keep moving. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you. And congratulations too on the appointment to Cradle to Career. I have noticed in our room here is the Honorable Mayor Caroline Simmons, newly elected, but on the job immediately for the city and for the people of Stanford. Madam Mayor, if you should choose to say a few words, we would appreciate that.
Thank you, Michael, and great to see you all virtually, and honored to be with you to celebrate Martin Luther King Jr. Day. And I know we all wish we could have been together in person, but it was really inspiring to get to be with many of you on the car vehicle procession today across our city. And I found it especially moving just, driving across our city and seeing the names of 4 giants of our community who we lost too early, and just wanted to take a moment to pay tribute to them, to Jack Bryant, John Versner, Elaine Mitchell, and Keith Simmons. And you could really just feel their presence as we were driving around Stanford today, and with their names on the front of the motorcade, and just driving through, communities and areas where we know they've had such an impact on the cause of justice. So just want to pay tribute to them and know that they're in our hearts today. I also just want to take a moment to thank everyone who sponsored today's event, the Friends of Ferguson Library, 100 Black Men of Stanford, the Concerned Clergy Coalition, Domus Kids, the Stanford MLK Committee, Stanford Stands Against Racism. And I think it just speaks volumes of how dedicated our community is. And to all of you on this call, for all the work that you do, thank you for what you do to support justice in our community every single day. It's hard to believe that it's been 60 years since the historic March on Washington, when Dr. King gave the renowned I Have a Dream speech. And I was rereading it again this morning and just thinking about the vision he painted for a society where people would not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. And how wonderful to have been made in this country since he gave that speech. And so much of that is due to the commitment of people like you who do the work every day to build a more just society. But I think we're also reminded on today that as we honor that vision, we have to also recognize that his work is not finished, and that all of us have to carry on that work and recommit ourselves to justice. And so that includes making sure every child has access to equal education, making sure there's affordable and environmentally safe housing for everyone in our community, making sure we're protecting voting rights, which are still under attack across our country. making sure everyone's treated equally under the law in our criminal justice system. We still have so much work to do. Getting rid of bias in our healthcare system and making sure everyone has equal health outcomes, which we just saw tragically during this pandemic did not happen. Making sure everyone has access to a good paying job and that everyone's treated equally. These are the causes that I know we all care so much about, and I couldn't be more honored to get to continue this work alongside all of you in this city that we all love. And so just want to say on behalf of the city of Stamford, our administration is so committed to working with all of you in the coming years to continuing the cause of justice in our community and doing everything we can to fulfill Dr. King's dream and to continuing to bend the arc of the moral universe towards justice. So I want to thank you, everyone, and honored to be with you all today.
Thank you, Mayor Simmons. We do appreciate your being here and participating, and more importantly, the words that you have indicated here, that the work is not done. Along those lines, we will depart just briefly from our program. I did notice that there are several people in our audience that it would be a sin not to call out. But the superintendent of our schools, Dr. Tamu Lucero, has joined us, as well as our U.S. representative, James Himes, Jim Himes, as we know him here. And if I could give to each of you 30 seconds, and in a Baptist minister's approach, 30 seconds equals 1 minute, I will allow Dr. Lucero to speak, and then Jim Himes. Dr. Lucero?
Thank you so much for the opportunity. This is just brings warmness to my heart. I always worry when we have a day off of school, are we using it in the way that it was meant to be used? And we hope that everyone has the opportunity to take time today and do some reflection. I was just on the phone with a principal who on this day is grappling with some decisions that we have to make for our students. To think that we as educators are at such a pivotal moment in this country, especially here in Stamford, where we have so many opportunities now to really reflect on what we want to do for all of our students to make sure that they are successful, cradle to career. And so to think that we now have this opportunity with a new leadership in our mayor's office and coming new leadership. Michael, I remember you that senior year of high school. You put a lot of emails into my email boxes advocating, and to see you and to know that you're a senior, just 4 years. Look at what happens in a 4-year period. Your life is completely changed. And so I am so excited. It was so nice to be on a caravan today, really reflecting back on the work of Jack Bryant. I remember being out there on those cold days and marching, and he would have smiled at all of us today. And to think that he ended his life doing what he loved, serving on our school board, it just brings joy to my heart. So I know I took a little more than 30 seconds, but I am so excited as to where we are going as a community. And I am so excited to be the superintendent and be ready to lead us in this work, both partnering with Mayor Simmons and all of our representatives that are here to support the hard work that we're doing now here in Stamford. So thank you for the moment to speak.
Thank you for your presence here. And we expect big things. And so we're going to be there to support you, but also to push the efforts that all of us are so committed to. So again, thank you, Dr. Lucero. Representative Himes?
Michael, thank you. I didn't anticipate participating, but thank you for the opportunity, really just to say thank you to the whole community that has come together, sadly online, next year, hopefully in person. And it is such a source of pride to hear Mayor Simmons and to be with this literally ecumenical group of people to talk about a topic so interesting and important as liberation theology. I joined, and I think I probably caught you off guard just because as much as I love celebrating the legacy of Martin Luther King, I always suspect on this day when kids are out of school, I always suspect that we don't maybe remember enough the risks and the sacrifices that those who have always demanded change from the oppressed suffer. And we all know how Martin Luther King's life ended. Liberation theology is particularly interesting. I grew up in Latin America and did a lot of my graduate work in Latin America, which of course was the geographic home of liberation theology, Brazil in particular. But I got to meet some of the people really engaging on the core notion of liberation theology, which is a preferential option for the poor, and to see the remarkable work that they did. I was really too young to see Martin Luther King in action. So like so many of our younger Americans, I only know that as history, but I saw in Latin America both the remarkable work that like Martin Luther King, leaders were drawing on, in particular the Christian church, but I'll hasten to add, especially as I see my friend Rabbi Hammerman, I will hasten to add that the instinct of a preferential option to the poor is not one that is monopolized by the Christian faith by any means. But again, in addition to the remarkable work that I saw happen in Latin America, I'm very conscious of the risk and the sacrifice involved, obviously by Martin Luther King in the way his life ended, but by some people that I had the opportunity to work with in El Salvador, some Jesuit priest, Segundo Montes, who was killed by the Salvadoran military in 1989, along with some of his fellow Jesuit priests. And I just highlight that not as a somber note, but times are tough now because of the pandemic, because of our political volatility, because of continuing injustice. And I just highlight that to remind all of us, and most importantly myself, that it's cold and it's scary and it's polarized out there. But the people, and in particular the person that we honored today, was most defined by his courage in the face of threats and fear, probably more intense than what any of us feel on a day-to-day basis here. So again, thank you so much for inviting me to participate. And I really look forward to learning more.
Well, again, we do thank you, and we ask that as our representative in Washington, that you do all you can to help us pass the legislation to ensure the rights of all of us to continue to vote across this country. It's so important that this happens. Thank you again, Representative Hymes. So at this moment, there are too many online for me to begin to call out, but there are some distinguished people here, all of you are, and we appreciate you being here this afternoon. So our general thanks to you and well wishes to all of you. With that, I understand, Ahmed, we may have a speech from Dr. King at this point.
True greatness comes not by favoritism, but by fitness. And so Jesus gave us a new norm of greatness. If you want to be important, wonderful. If you want to be recognized, wonderful. If you want to be great, wonderful. But recognize that he who is greatest among you shall be your servant. That's a new definition of greatness. By giving that definition of greatness, it means that everybody can be great, because everybody can serve.
Everyone can, in fact, serve. We're now about to move into the other portion of our program, and we specifically chose this particular topic on liberation theology that we thought was important. My coming to Stanford and living in this town, there were at least 4 or 5 individuals who were clergy, are clergy, here in Stanford, who meant the world to me. The Reverend Dr. Robert Perry, who is the recent past pastor at Union Baptist Church, who is on the line today as well. The Reverend Winton Hill and the Reverend Johnny Bush, and also having the opportunity to meet the First Lady of Religion here in town, the Reverend Herline Streeter. All of those individuals pushed forward in a mighty way that this community would be better, that we would be socially active, that we would be concerned about our brothers and sisters. I've had the honor of protesting and being on picket lines with Reverend Bush and with Reverend Hill on other occasions. So that I'm honored that they are here today, but that I'm going to introduce the Reverend Johnny Bush, who is the pastor of Greater Faith on Baxter Avenue here in Stamford. He and I have a close kinship, as that we are both brothers of the South Carolina, the most important state in the union. And so he has brought together a group for this particular forum to talk with us about the legacy and what it all means for us today. So with that, the Reverend Johnny Bush will proceed with the panel.
Thank you, Michael. And are you able to hear me pretty well?
We can hear you loud and clear.
Okay.
Yes.
Good afternoon to everyone. And I'm certainly delighted to be with you and with this momentous occasion where we celebrate a movement. And of course, I'm grateful for our panelists and that will be sharing with us today, which I'm going to briefly now present to you so that we can get to some of that discussion. First, I want to say that instead of the specific subject around liberation theology, our panel has been invited to look a little more broader at King's legacy and looking at faith and liberation. So that may be a little bit broader than just liberation theology. And so I want to kind of alert you as a gathered community on that. Today we have 3 panelists that will be in conversation, and we have one who will serve on the panelists as an experientialist, who we call an eyewitness in the struggle, and I'm going to present all of those persons at this point. First, and I am not sure how, Michael, we will isolate the panel in any way. I'm not sure if that will be done in any particular way, or they just will be speaking from where they are.
Okay. I was about to use the draconian method of shutting off videos for everybody who is not part of the panel, but I will ask you in a more democratic way that in this instance, if you would turn off your video, Zoom should reposition in the hierarchy those people who are on video to speak. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. And so while you're responding to your devices, our panelists today, first, we have the Reverend Jacqueline D. Gilchrist, who is the minister for the North Stamford Community Church, United Church of Christ in Stamford. And we also have Imam Al-Hassan Kamagti from the Yonkers Islamic Association, and also a clinician, staff chaplain clinician at the Westchester Medical Center in Valhalla. We also have with us the Reverend Mark Lingle, who leads our Interfaith Council here in Southwestern Connecticut, and also minister for the St. Francis Episcopal Church in Stamford. And as I also shared with you, we will hear from the experience to initiate conversations today from Apostle Herline Streeter, who has been part of the struggle over the years, and she is the leader and apostle for the Jesus is Lord Tabernacle of Deliverance here in Stamford. And we want to welcome all of those persons as our panelists for today. Now, our panel is being moderated by a very special person, and we are so delighted to have Miss Brittany Miller. And she is a 5-time Emmy Award-winning journalist, a Connecticut native, and got her start at News 12 in New York City. And she then worked in Atlanta, Georgia, as a reporter and anchor from the political from political scandals to hurricanes, to protests for social justice. Brittany has covered a wide range of news stories along the East Coast. And she has also spent time volunteering with organizations geared toward helping youth, as mentoring is another passion of hers. So Brittany graduated from magna cum laude with a degree in broadcast journalism from Temple University. And she is currently the main anchor for News 12, New Jersey, and News 12, Connecticut. And so we want to welcome her as our moderator, and she will take the license to kind of navigate the movement of the panel following the introductory comments and experience that Apostle Streeter will now come to share. We want to welcome our panelists now and thank you all for giving us this time. So let's welcome Apostle Streeter. And after Apostle Streeter gives us our opening comments, we will then hear from our moderator.
Greetings, greetings. I'm honored to have this time to commemorate the life and legacy and dream of Dr. Martin Luther King. In addition to honoring his life, I'd like to emphasize why keeping Dr. King's dream and his work as a drum major for justice alive. I, Hollingfield Streeter, as a child, grew up in a city in a town called Farmville, North Carolina, in a loving home with both my parents and my siblings. I was the youngest girl in the family and was basically insulated from the reality of racism. Our parents shielded us from all the terrible things as they could, that the Jim Crow laws that had pertained to Black people, onto Negroes, as they call them then, niggers. However, my first encounter of racism that I really could understand was both terrifying and traumatic. My cousin, my parents allowed me to go to visit my cousin to spend the night with them. And my cousin husband took me and his 2 children to the grocery store with him. In those days, you had to go into the back of the grocery store to get the groceries. And in the back alley, my cousin husband was picking up his groceries. And he had one more box to get. And the young white sheriff that had been added to the force came up and said, "Move your car, nigger." And my cousin said, "Yes, sir, yes, sir." Soon as I get my last box of groceries, and the young evil sheriff shot my cousin dead right before me and his 2 children. And that was absolutely I mean, when I think of it now, it was like, whoa. It was terrible. It was terrible. It was terrible. It was terrible. And we were screaming, screaming, screaming. But we saw him die because the white sheriff says he sassed him because he said, yes, sir, as soon as I get my grocery, he didn't move his car. Right away, he was getting his last box of grocery to feed his family, And that was absolutely hard. Also, as a child, I grew up, I went to the beautiful school called H.B. Sugg, was beautiful to us, because that's the only school we had when I was little, younger, growing up at that time. And we had the inferior library. So I need a book, and our library did not have that book. So there was a beautiful library downtown where we passed that our parents paid taxes for. And I just decided just to go and ask for the book because I really wanted to do good on my class. I walked into the library and the librarian said, little girl, you know we don't serve niggers in here. I said, I just want a book and we don't have it at our school and I need a book real bad. So in those days, a lady named Penny Kill Monk was married to the Monks, which is the richest people in our town. They owned everything just about. She walked in because my daddy was her personal chef. And she says, Hurley, what are you doing? And so the sheriff came in, his name was Sheriff Lucas. He came in and she said, what are you doing here, Sheriff? They said, well, somebody was here disturbing the peace. And so he said, so she found out that I was in there and she said, this young child is looking for a book. She told the librarian to get me the book. And she told them that I must get a book if I want it anytime I come in there. And that she made the sheriff to go out. And she really told them off. She was from New York. She married him from the South, the Mr. Morris. It was so much stuff that I grew up to see as I began to get older. And so the dream must stay alive. I've seen so many things, like some of our people lived in another section of town that we have to walk through the white section to get to home. And at night, the white people at that time didn't put shades up to their windows. They didn't do anything like that. They kept their windows open and they would walk almost naked back and forth in their house. And then the cops would arrest and beat up the black young men and say they were peeping Toms. So I've seen all forms of crazy stuff as I grew up in the South. And in the meantime, there was a pool right joining our property, where he was on, my family owned. And the pool was for white only. We used to watch them go into the beautiful blue water and swim and enjoy themselves. And we couldn't go there. We had to go to a beach, a little place in Little Washington, North Carolina, where it was not a good place. It has a whole lot of glass and a whole lot of broken down buildings in there, but that's the only time we could get to go into water to swim and to enjoy ourselves. So I've seen a lot. And I came to the north. Glory to God. And then there was another type of racism. So you see, we have been fighting for justice, and it's always been injustice. And I want to know, because I know I don't have long to tell you all the things that I have witnessed and that I have seen and that I have experienced in my lifetime. And I came to the north, and then there was a different type of racism. It was still keeping you from making money and having the same kinds of jobs. And if you had the same job, you didn't get the same pay. I had so many other kinds of things. But in the meantime, because I realized that I have very little time, I want you to know today that we still gotta fight. We still gotta fight. We still gotta work that the dream will be a reality. We are dreaming, and it's not an impossible dream, because that we can do it if we work together. We can really fight this stuff. There's still discrimination in housing. There's still discrimination in everything. And that's why we as a people gonna have to realize that the reproduction of descendants of African slavery, listen, we can't just be Black and need help, because you see, all people of color now, as they call us, they need help too. And we want immigrants need help from other places, but we were slaves, our parents were slaves, and they never got this, as Dr. Martin Luther King said, they never got their 40 acres. We never got that we have been enslaved for. So it's time that, because we have experienced much and we have suffered much as a people, the other people have gotten theirs, we need to get over. So we're gonna have to fight together, and we're gonna have to put this dream into reality. And I'm so grateful for the concerning clergy. I'm so grateful for all the other people that's working hard to bring together absolutely equality for all people, and that we all will be treated right. I have seen my cousin be beat down and shot down just because they could be shot and nobody would call them to question. And most of the time it was by the police. Most of the time it was. I've seen the Ku Klux Klans. Yes, I've seen them do things in our community. As long as we stayed on the track, on the side of the track, they said, but yet if we ever walk, I went in the stores, and in those stores that we had to go in the back of the stores to get anything and everything, food or whatever. And one day I decided I wanted a soda fountain. I got and went into the drugstore, and I sat on the counter, and they said, we don't serve niggers in here too. I've been called that many times because my mother would say, Herling, don't get yourself killed, don't get us all killed. Because I said, no, but I didn't know it was that bad. I didn't understand that they hated us that bad. But my mother taught us, they are sick. Anybody that hates anybody is sick. So don't be sick, just pray for them. But in the meantime, she said, learn to vote. She said, get to vote when you get older. Get on communities, work in your community, make a change. I say to us today, in order to fulfill the dream that our Dr. Martin Luther King had, we have got to work, we have got to call, we have got to get on our P's and Q's and let everybody know we deserve what we have worked hard for, our foreparents have, and we are not going to stop until we get it. The dream is possible. And I believe, hallelujah, if I don't see it, I'm 86. If I don't see it, my children are going to inherit it. We're going to get that 40 acres plus. We're going to get the money that belongs to us. We're going to get the equality that belongs to us. We're not going to stay in Stanford in the North and allow the racism that's here in this city to continue to hold us back, because they do a different thing now. They get other people that come in, skin not as black as mine, but they get the first choices because of they're not dark, or they get the first choice because they get the jobs, they get the first job, they get the houses. All our people, my friends and my family members too, had to move up to upstate Connecticut, Waterbury, Bridgeport, all those places, because the housing here, they tore down the houses that we was in, and they built houses that we can't afford. But I still know the dream gonna have to work. God will not allow us to keep doing this if we do what we're supposed to be doing. May the Lord God bless you. Let's continue to celebrate the great Martin Luther King, but above all, let's celebrate our King of Kings. Thanks to every one of you. I love you, and God bless you and keep you as we continue to celebrate today. In Jesus' name.
Thank you, Apostle. And let us now welcome Brittany as she comes with our panel. Thank you.
I mean, if you want Apostle Streeter to keep talking and testifying, I'm totally okay with that. I mean, that was just unbelievably powerful and so important, because so many people think that these things happened decades ago, which they did, but longer than it has been. And it's important to remember that we are still being mistreated because of the color of our skin. It's important to remember that the fight is far from over. And so thank you again, Apostle Streeter, for sharing that. I may be calling or texting you in the coming days just to hear some more, just so I can tell people my age and pass on everything that you've been through. But I want to actually start off with that topic of the dream and pose that question to our panel. You know, when you look at the fight for social justice today, especially what we've been experiencing across our country for the past 20 months, you have to ask yourselves, are we living his dream today? And we've talked about it a little bit, but I'd love to hear what our panel thinks. And I'll pose this question to the whole panel, and I'll start with Reverend Gilchrist. You have to unmute yourself, Reverend Gilchrist. There you go.
I think I'm unmuted now.
We hear you.
Okay. There's something else in the thing here. Okay, I think I'm unmuted. Are we living the dream today? I think that we are living the dream partially. We have come a long way with the dream. We are not where we used to be, but we have not made it to the mountaintop yet. There's still a lot of work that has to be done. There's still a lot of division that's happening, and racism is still current, even though we, want to think that it has passed us and we don't want to think about it, but racism is still real. And we know that it's real based on all the things that have happened recently within our culture and within our America. And so we still have a lot of work to do when it comes to freedom and justice for all people. Dr. Martin Luther King was about justice. He wanted to awaken the consciousness not only of Black people, but of American people, to let everyone know that we all have a right to liberation. We all have a right to freedom. And so we have not got there yet completely, but we are on our way, and we've been on our way for a long time, but we still have much more work to do.
And Imam, let me ask, can you hear me? Can you guys hear me? Okay. Imam, let me ask you as a follow-up, how do we get there? How do we get to the mountaintop, as Reverend Gilchrist said?
Well, I think I agree with what she has said. I think getting there is going to take some time, because if you look at the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King, it didn't just take one day to get there. It came in the midst of all troubles, kind of challenges, which existed then and are still existing now. So before we can get there, I think a whole lot of work needs to be done. Yes, so I don't think it is an easy journey yet, but the fact that a pace has been set for us to follow, I think is something remarkable for us to actually concentrate on and to move.
Well done. Okay. And Reverend Lingle, how would you piggyback off of that? What do you think?
First of all, thank you for allowing me to be here. Thanks for everyone who put this together, and thank you all for being here on this call. I would agree that there have been strides that have been made, but also there is a lot of work that needs to be done. When we look at the rates of incarceration, when we look at what's been happening, obviously, over the last 2 years with the pandemic and healthcare, what was referenced earlier with regard to housing, poverty, all of those are education, are areas where, we can see that there's still a huge gap and a lot of work that needs to be done. It underscores the systemic reality of racism. And the sad reality in part is that there are a lot of people out there who deny that it exists. And I think that, part of the work in terms of moving things forward is finding ways to open people's eyes to that reality, that there is a systemic nature, and it's not just, saying you need to pull yourself up by your bootstraps, but to be able to lay out for people so that they can see and recognize how the system is rigged, and it is basically holding a whole segment of the population down. The reality is that is a moral issue, and it's one that we continue to work on. But it's also, from my perspective, one that there's a very easy argument that there's an economic issue here as well. When we have people who are not educated, they're put in prison, they're not allowed to be able to access college or the job that they would like, or housing, all of those things impede the whole society. We would be a richer, fuller society if everybody were able to live into who it is that they are to be.
Great answers by all three of you. And I just want to mention, you don't have to wait for me to jump in and call on you. I want this to be, family oriented. And so if you want to just respond to another one of your colleagues' comments, feel free to do that. Okay, cool. Thumbs up. Okay. So Dr. King said faith is taking the first step, even when you can't see the whole staircase. What is it about your faith that connects you to liberation? And Imam, I'll start with you on this one.
Basically, when you look at what the Holy Quran is saying, I will quickly want to make reference to the story of Moses when the Israelites were under the, were being tortured and subjected to the most inhuman treatment by the pharaohs. God raised him and then asked him to go and liberate them. But then he had the opportunity to question God. This is a king who is so powerful. So how do I get there? Are there tools for me to get there? And God said, yes. There's no messenger right in front of me who entertains fears when I call him. So in the light of this, Dr. Martin Luther King, when he was being called, he never sat down and crossed his fingers, but he really expedited action to actualize the call by rising up, mobilizing, and moving with full force against the forces of the day, because they are the powers of the day. So it was out of this that, he was able to achieve his desirable aim at some point decisively, even though he did not live long to see, some of the fruits of what he has, or some of the things that he has sown bearing fruits. And yet, still, we keep him as a reference point. He will be in his grave at this time, turning around. So the story of Moses, in this case, connects me directly to the issue of liberation. So when Moses came, he was able to liberate the people of Israelites from the bondage of slavery under Pharaoh. So this is something I will briefly want to say, that I keep on making reference to that. Thank you. I
think also I think all of our traditions draw on the book of Genesis, the creation narrative, and it talks about the reality of the divine, that we're all made in the image of the divine. And I think, to reference what Apostle Streeter said earlier, the heinousness of what happened, what she witnessed, is heightened because of the fact that if we are truly Jewish, Christian, Muslim, at the heart of what we do is to have to be able to see the divine in the other. And the fact that we treat people, we subjugate them, is an abomination to all of our traditions.
Yeah. And you referenced Apostle Streeter again. I just thought of something. When it comes to the younger generation, how do we make sure that her story and also the legacy of Dr. King stays alive? Obviously, we have MLK Day, but on a daily basis, the 364 other days of the year, what can we do to keep that legacy alive and also pass down those stories generation to generation? Reverend Gilchrist?
I really think that the younger generation is actually doing a better job of keeping Martin Luther King's dream alive, because to our younger generation, racism is stupid. They don't understand why shouldn't, if we think of our younger generation, why shouldn't we love who we need to love. Why shouldn't we love one another? Why shouldn't we, be kind and loving to one another? That doesn't make any sense to many of our young people. And so they are not seeing or operating, I should say, they are not operating in a division the way that maybe other aspects of the culture are operating in. They are together. My children, I mean, they're adults now, but they are so diverse in the communities that they hang with and their friends and even who they're marrying and things like that. So in our younger generation, I feel that they are really keeping the dream alive more so than older generations. Older generations are still stuck in what used to be, and the mindset and mentality of racism and slavery and all of that. But our young people are like, we're not going to do that. We're going to be unified and together. And I took my young people, I was the youth minister of my church at Union Baptist Church, and we took several young people to Africa, and they were able to see Africa and whatnot, and experience that and communicate with those that were over there. And their experience was just quite different than maybe of the older adults that went to this trip, because they saw themselves as unified. They did not see themselves as division. And what was interesting was the young people of Africa did not also see that division at the time. And I'm talking about a younger generation. They did not have the experience that maybe some of their older ancestors and things had. So they have also even shifted to become more unified than our older generation has. So I think our young people are doing a better job of keeping the dream alive than our older generations.
Yes, I think I quite agree with everything at all that you have said. Just about 30 minutes ago, when I was coming from the BHC, I usually have this group with them on weekly basis. So I had the opportunity of asking them, given the chance, what would you want to see change in life? And most of the answers they gave conformed with the dreams of Dr. Martin Luther King. And I was so shocked. This is BHC, Mental Health Department. So I mean, just to support what you have just said. And I have a 17-year-old boy right now reading much about Martin Luther King. So I said, what is it, about Dr. Martin Luther King that that you like reading it, his books, and Nelson Mandela as well. He says, yes, when he was in Ghana, one of the boarding houses that he was sent to was Martin Luther King Jr. House. And they were championing the cause of the school in terms of sports, in terms of everything. So somebody told him much about Dr. Martin Luther King and recommended that he reads much about him. And then the first book he read actually influenced him to get to where he is now. So you can imagine. So if we give them much education about the legacies that Martin Luther King Jr. left, actually, I think we'll get somewhere. And then these are young men who will sit down and say, if I had my way, I will want everyone to have equal rights. I will abolish racial discrimination, discrimination in terms of justice, in terms of economic, political and education. All these, they mention it in my group. So I just want to add to what you have just said.
I think also thinking about just how youth are engaged these days, it's important to have a day like this. It's important to make sure that it's a part of our curriculum in schools. It's important that we understand the history so that we don't repeat that history, and also to be aware of the pitfalls that exist within that history. I'm thinking about from the perspective of, we're here today. Stanford, I think, is a community that, those who are on this call are, committed to the work that's about justice and reconciliation about ending systemic racism, white supremacy. And the reality is that there's also, a group of people out there who are not interested in that. As a Christian, I'm thinking about something that's very disturbing in our culture, and that is the rise of Christian nationalism, and the strange juxtaposition that we have people on this panel from religious backgrounds, and there are people out there who espouse just diametrically oppositional views, and will still say that they're a part of a religious tradition. And I think that that's important for us in terms of educating people from religious perspectives. It's not that they have to be a part of any one tradition, but I think to understand what it is that these communities are about, what it is that we profess, what it is that is an outlier and is totally oppositional to what it is that we are about, is important for people to know. And the reality is that I think in this past year or two, we've dipped below 50% of people saying that they belong to any one community. And I am not one to say that you have to be a part of a religious tradition, but I think that that's also fraying the fabric of our communities on a number of levels. One is, again, understanding what that tradition is, but also the importance of the community that people are a part of, that they sense belonging, they know that they're loved, they have a connection, there's a support system, people who care for them. I mean, those are critical. So if they're not getting them in a religious place, hopefully they're getting it in some other place. But that's an important part of what we do, and it's tied to what Dr. King talked about as the beloved community, understanding that our work together is involved in raising each other up and trying to embody that reality in the world.
And it sounds like, Reverend Lingle, it sounds like the group that you're talking about are religious nuns, the people who really don't have like a religious affiliation. I read a recent study by the Pew Research Center, and it was saying 30% of US Americans don't have any sort of religious affiliation. So maybe they're spiritual, but say they're not religious, or maybe they just still pray. So my question is, how do you draw them back into the church so that you can give them that foundation of faith, and so you can sort of impart those principles?
I was thinking that obviously you would like them to be a part of that, but I also think that what was said earlier by Reverend Gilchrist is true, that younger people get certain things that I think that those of us in the tradition don't get, or at least are not as facile in terms of dealing with it. Which for me is one of the things is that I can understand a young person coming into particularly the church that I'm a part of and looking at that worship and going, what is this? But the place where we can connect, and we really need to be connecting, is around social justice, social outreach, community life, and youth are very much involved and interested in those things. They don't care if you're Episcopalian, Lutheran, Roman Catholic, Jewish, Muslim. What they're concerned about is making a difference, and I think that that's where our intersection with them is. Because that's at the bedrock of all of our traditions, not just praying, but living out those prayers.
I'd like to piggyback on that, and I think that's really important. Something that Pastor Mark said, that our young people could care less about our denominational names and all of that. They really could. They don't care. And it's not even our young people. We have older people that are moving away from that as well, where I've had people that have been in my congregation and moved to another state or whatever, and will contact me and say, Pastor Jackie, I'm now a part of a Lutheran church, because they found community there. They found a place to belong. So it didn't matter what the tag was or the denomination was of that church. And so we have young people that sometimes, if we really talk to them, they might even be more spiritual than the people that are actually sitting in our chairs in our pews, because they are embracing the love of God and sharing that with others. And if we could break that down, I think of this division that's even happening within our religious circles, if we can break that down, we would be more attractive to young people who are saying, I don't want to be a part of organized religion. I'm spiritual, you know, that kind of thing. And the organized religion that they don't want to be a part of is the division that we have created. So the interfaith council, even how different faiths are coming together, I think is just beautiful because we can learn from one another. There is something that I can learn from the Episcopalian. There's something I can learn with the Jewish tradition and even incorporate it with in my own tradition because it has worth and value and it brings spiritual growth and makes people feel like they're closer to God. And so if we could break that division down that's happening even within religious circles, then I think the nuns who don't want to be associated with the division that we have created will be more attractive to different communities of faith and have more of a connection and be able to be nurtured in that faith if we could break down the division that we have going on.
Yeah, I want to speak from an Islamic perspective. I think growing up as a child, I was only introduced to one particular sect, and that was the dominant sect at the time. And there was that kind of unity, peace, and harmony. And the young and upcoming, you know, actually showed interest in that. So you could see the young folks trooping into the mosque to pray, especially when our fathers were going. I mean, we're made to understand that there is something special when you go to the mosque, you pray, you have connection with God, you know, things like that. Until there was this kind of sectarian division. We have so many sects emerging, you know, contemporarily with, I mean, all of them with the same, I mean, with different ideologies. But when you come to the original theme or central theme of the faith, is one. But if you go to the sectarian level, the ideologies differ. So when these dynamics started playing, a lot of children became confused. So they no longer know where to belong to. Because as children, we are connected to each other and we have a common movement. So once our parents, the elderly ones in the church or in the mosque in this case, started dividing themselves, that is when, you know, the lack of enthusiasm within the young folks begin to manifest. And that is the challenge we have now.
I guess the question is, how do we bridge that gap? You know, if you look at things that we're going to do on a micro level, what are the day-to-day actions that we can take to sort of make sure that we can all come together across those generations? Yes, like Jacqueline said, I think interfaith dialogue is one of the, you know, methods that we can adapt when everyone will be on board. We discuss issues collectively. We see where we agree and where we disagree. That which unites us, I think, is bigger than that which, divides us. So we concentrate rather on things that actually unite us. So once we do that, the young will learn from us, and I think it will pave a way for them to return. I want to read this question that Michael Hyman just put in the group chat because it's pretty good. He says, and I hope he's okay with me reading it. He says, are we placing too much hope on young people when 74% of young Republicans, 18 to 29, believe that Trump won the election? That's according to the Harvard Kennedy School poll. Absent the deeper relational conversations, are they not just as susceptible to racist ideologies? Reverend Gilchrist, want to start?
I think that they are susceptible to a racist mentality, but I really believe that they are resisting that. I think they are resisting that, and I think we have to put emphasis on our younger generation. because they are today as well as the future. Because if we don't embrace what they're trying to do, then what's happening right now is going to continue. The racism will continue. So but they're trying to break away from that in their thoughts and how they interact with one another. And what they're trying to do, that will be then the culture that will be that will derive later, that will come into effect later, because they're going to have children and their children are going to have children. So I think it comes with really breaking. We've got to get our act together, meaning older generations, but it's our young generation that I believe is going to be the key in breaking down racism, because they are rejecting it right now.
Let me just add to that. It's been said that racism is taught. So you could argue that it's the older generations who are teaching the younger generations about racism. And in a lot of news stories that we see, even on my end, it's the younger kids who are making TikToks and they're using racist, verbiage, and they're embarrassing people, and they're sort of perpetuating that racism on a daily basis. And so it's interesting to see how the younger generation is fighting back against racism. Maybe it's bad apples. Reverend Lingle, you want to weigh in?
Sure, I would say that, well, it's always will be an ongoing battle. It's not something that, you can just sit back and say that, we've arrived. One of the classic understandings of our anthropology from the Lutheran perspective is that we're simultaneously saints and sinners, right? So that there's always that element within us that can do amazing and beautiful things, and also we're flawed. My wife told me today that she was driving around and she saw a sign that said MLK, not CRT. And, I think that there's a part of what we're dealing with is the fact that our culture has become so divided. And, I think the pandemic obviously is a huge piece of it. I certainly think that the former president was a huge problem with all of that, but also social media has, divided the country. And there are any number of other reasons for this division. I think it's partly why religious organizations are so important. Again, not that people join them necessarily, but that they provide oases for people to reflect on critical things about who we are, how we live together, what are the kind of the essential moral, ethical tenets that we want to live by, and using those to reach out to other organizations in communities. So the schools, businesses, that we're siloed to begin with as religious organizations, but we're trying to break those down, and we're trying to break down the silos that we've created in other elements of our society. So for instance, I think Cradle to Career is one of those places where we've tried to bring people to the table so that we can begin to start to deal with these issues. But the reality is that people will continue to hate. And I think that part of the legacy of Dr. King is the response to that is not to hate back, but it is to try to create structures that will, again, keep people safe, let them know that they are loved, they're cared for, we have each other's back, and that's the community that you want to live in, more than the one that is going to continue to spew all of this hate. I don't think that there's a silver bullet, but it does mean that we have to continue to stand up and speak out against those things that happen that are racist, white supremacist, anti-Black bias.
But I don't think, may I say something? Oh, I was saying,
of course.
I agree with what Dr. Mark Lingle has said and those others, but I know that without a foundation of love, and the only way the foundation of love can come is because we know God. And those people that don't know God and don't believe in God don't know love. Now they say they do. However, as Mark just said, I was taught, even though I've experienced all this stuff, but my parents taught us not to hate people. They taught us why? Because God is love, they said. Now, okay, so people don't want to be in the community of Christianity. I don't say a religion in a sense, I just say Christianity. I do know there are a lot of people that say that they're Christians based have been the ones that hate and have taught hate and doing hate. Going back to the school system, children go to school at a very early age. They go to daycare, they go to preschool, and they need to be taught that everybody is that. So somebody gonna ask the other, why your skin dark? Somebody gonna say, why you white? Why you look like that? So they need to be able, somebody need to teach them that everybody was created by God. That they're those people, everybody's important, how important they are, not the color of your skin, like Dr. Martin Luther King said, it's your character, it's your conduct. So I still say we need to not to throw Christianity out the window because the young folks don't believe in God. We need to show them God, not your foot down their throat. You show them love, you show them what's right. However, it was even in our nation's capital, in January the 6th, it was some of the folks that said they're Christians, but they really did a terrible job in showing Christianity. But that don't mean we hate them either, but it means we show them and we let them know we don't tolerate this. Voting rights is so important. Speaking out and knowing your neighborhood and knowing your community and caring about your government and what they represent, what they do. Talk to your official leaders that you put in office. All of this is going to be important for us for the dream and what God has for us to be in our reality. All I'm saying is that I know young people are so important. I love young people. I work with young people. I have young people that I work with all my life and in the church and in the school system. All I'm saying is they need to be taught there is a foundation, and that we must know that foundation is that all of us are created equal. How do we get that? Because God created us, and the God that loved us created us. And so love would help us to learn to appreciate each other along with that.
And when you look at love and faith, which we know were the pillars of what MLK believed in, and it's a pillar of the Christian faith. And then you look at January 6th, as you just brought up, and then you look at, what's going to happen tomorrow with the Senate vote of the Voting Rights Act. It's hard to understand how we can still be fighting this fight so many years later. 1965 was almost 60 years ago. So what is the message you have to Christians? What is the message you have to people who do identify with a religion in terms of how to keep up that fight and how to keep Dr. King's legacy in your heart moving forward? Reverend Imam, want to start? I think you're not into unmute.
Well, I think what I do mostly, my sermon does not dwell much on spirituality. I think sometimes I delve a bit into politics. I delve a bit into social life, and I delve a bit into, consciousness of where we are as a people, togetherness, how to move as one people with one common destiny. So these are some of the issues that I use this platform to talk about. So once you begin talking about, a lot of people will get the message, and that message will be discerning. I think when we begin talking, issues with this, in this regard, this is how we can actually convey a very viable message to our congregations, and that will be helpful in a way.
I think in order to keep things going, we have to faith. We've been talking about faith. We've been talking about liberation and Martin Luther King. And if we look at the word faith, faith says that we hope for things that we cannot see. And so yet see. Faith is the substance of things we cannot yet see. And so in spite of the fact that we are striving and we are seeking for liberation that we might not be able to see in all areas of our lives yet, we are still striving and moving forward to that, because faith is what's going to drive us. But it's liberation that gives us our compass, that gives us our direction, and points us towards what we're trying to aim for. And so we're trying to aim for liberation for all people. And so we keep moving forward in that direction, even though we're on different paths and we're trying to, you know, reach the same thing. We have to understand that there's going to be a lot of work that we have to do, because even though we seem to be on the same path, we have different understandings of what that path should be and what that path should look like. But faith is the driving force. Faith is the driving force. And so we have to do with, what is it? Keep hope alive. In spite of we can't see it just yet in all the areas of our lives, we've got to keep hope alive and stay on the path forward to the dream that Martin Luther King was hoping for all of us, that we all would have justice, we all would have liberation. And if we can keep that in mind, that that's the goal. That's the goal for all of us to have. Liberation for all people. I'm a part of the United Church of Christ, and the motto of the United Church of Christ is that we all might be one, that we all might be one. And so that is the focus of that particular strand, religious strand, that we all might be one. And so that's what I keep in my mind and in my focus, even within my own religious tradition, even in my own congregation, that we all are one, because I serve a diverse church of Black, white, Hispanic, Asian, Indian, all come through the doors of my church and all come and sit in the pews of my church. And so if I can keep that focus and I can preach that gospel of love, that we all are one, then I think that I'm doing my part to keep faith and liberation happening, keep justice before us, and hopefully I'm doing my part to help us get to where we're aiming to get to.
I think also that it's, I know it was in the chat, organizing is important. We need to be organized. We need to continue to, you know, come together, particularly if we have, you know, like-minded. We're looking for those types of policies here in Stamford, in the state of Connecticut, across the country, that are going to promote the justice and the equity that Pastor Gilchrist is talking about. We also need to be like Michael Hyman, you know your facts, right? What is happening and what is the reality in the world? And, you know, be able to have those conversations and understand, you know, what's a red herring and what are really the issues that we need to be addressing. I mean, obviously, you can throw a wide net and you catch all sorts of things, but it's also trying to focus on what are the critical issues that we need to be spending time and energy on and organizing around. The other piece I would say is, you know, following on Adam Grant and his most recent book, you know, the idea that you're going to change people's minds by basically shaming them or, you know, belittling them is not something that's going to work. So we've got to be able to engage people who do not think the way that we do, in a respectful way and in a way that seeks to build relationship. And I think that that's extremely difficult. It's not something that I have, you know, is first on my list, but to be able, again, to see their humanity and to try to develop relationships where possible so that that type of change can happen, because we see the other person, we respect the other person, and we're not just simply belittling them and pushing them even further and deeper into whatever the mindset that they have. I think that's extremely difficult. But it's obviously very, very important. And continuing to push forward, you know, with our politicians, those things like the Voting Rights Act and other legislation that's critical for equity. And the final thing I would say is that I think a lot of, again, the arguments, they're moral and ethical. There's huge economic impact. We benefit when we help each other out, right? That's what we should be doing. Martin Luther King Jr. said that, a society that is bound by the three evils of poverty, racism, and militarism has basically lost its soul.
This one out, but can you see me?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Very well said, all three of you. Reverend Bush actually just put a question in the chat. How has religion been used to perpetuate some of the injustice we're all victims of? And what can religions do to guard against this? Imam, want to start?
Oh, yes. I think I'm just going to make a reference from the life of the Holy Prophet Muhammad. After his demise, I think a lot of groups emerged, and some of the scholars, took that as an advantage to actually introduce certain things into the religion for their personal gains, and then connect them to divine, issues, saying these are from divine. Especially, I'm just giving a typical example, and that is the right of women in this case. So because at the time they wanted to actually, suppress the rights of women, they implore certain things, certain talks, saying, attributing it to the Holy Prophet. But contemporarily, when you sit down and analyze it logically, you realize that these are things that Prophet never would have said it, based on what you have read about his life and his relationship with women and how he dignified, respected, and gave women their rights, and which is beautifully captured in his last sermon when he said, women are your partners, women are your mothers. The wise man of today was once in the womb of a woman for 9 months. So your paradise is under the feet of your mothers. So for the same prophet to turn again and then elevate another creature over a woman, I think there is that kind of contradiction there. So I think these are some of the terms that scholars have used to actually, this, and so many examples. This just one examples that they use to actually satisfy their egocentric interest instead of serving the word of God. So, that's one issue. Then another issue is that when these sectarian ideologies started emerging, everyone wants to, propound a theory, a very beautiful theory that goes to his advantage. And then they use that to suppress the innocent ones, the less privileged in the community, and threatened that if you don't follow these kind of ideologies, your end will be in hellfire. So you can imagine talking to somebody who is not well-versed like you, in terms of scholarship. So they have taken advantage of so many people. So these are some of the things that they do. But thank God, now we have staged, a crusade where we have begun going around sieving the good ones from the bad ones, the good sayings from the bad sayings. So this is a method that we have adopted. Once you hear a hadith or a saying of the prophet, subject it to serious scrutiny, analyze it, use your brain to measure, to see whether it conforms with high moral standard or it is measured up to divine, message before you implement it. So these are some of the methods that we have adapted, and we are making a headway. So we can't run away from the fact that people have not used or people have not actually, cheated others in the name of God. It's there and it's still there. So the struggle is still on, and hopefully we will get somewhere.
I really agree with what you have just said. Very powerful of how you broke that down. One of the things I feel that the religious community is really not helping with this problem with racism is because knowledge is power. Now, knowledge is power. The thing is how we're utilizing that knowledge even within our faith communities. And many times we are presenting particular doctrines that are not necessarily just based on scripture, it's based on the interpretation of the scripture. And so whoever is bringing forth that into their communities of faith, they're putting some things in there that might not be, and I'll just say might not be really according to what the scripture is saying. And so like Iman was talking about how we have, treated women, as lesser, even within certain traditions, women do not have the same place as men. And, in certain traditions, women don't have an opportunity to even be a speaker or a minister within certain traditions because of the interpretation that has been given to scripture and made doctrine within that church. And so we are really pushing this sense of division, this sense of the lesser than within our communities of faith that have to be changed. And we have to show unification. We have to show equality within our faith traditions in order for that to even, be able to come out more within our culture. So like I said before, if we are showing division within our traditions, then we are promoting division and racism within our communities. And so we have to get better within our own religious circles and faith traditions to be better when it comes to unification and being what the gospel, and I'm taking it from a Christian perspective, from the gospel is about love, like Apostle Streeter said, and we must have love for one another. That's what the gospel is about. The gospel is about love. The gospel is about justice. The gospel is about liberation. And if in the Christian tradition, if we are not being able to promote that when we speak to our congregations, then we are not helping the situation. We are keeping it locked in what is, and we're trying to break out of that and become more and more of what Dr. Martin Luther King was trying to promote, because what he was trying to promote is what God, and I'm not talking about the Christian God or anything like, I'm talking about the universal God, is trying to promote to all of us, because we should all have the same thread, the same dominating thread, that we want to show love for all people, because God is a God of all people. If God wanted us to be all alike, we wouldn't have this panel right now, or everybody that's on here looking so different, because God is a God of diversity. So we must embrace diversity and must embrace unification and stop the nonsense of division, not just in our communities, but also within our religious communities.
I will go back a long way. My sense of what part of the problem with religions and the issues that we're dealing with is the Constantine, the emperor, converting in the 4th century. And you have this fledgling group, pockets of communities throughout the Mediterranean. And all of a sudden you have this movement now aligned with worldly power. And it has created amazing music and art, but it has totally corrupted the tradition. And for millennia, we have responded in the world, not out of the call of love that we've been talking about, but basically domination. And until we reclaim that those, marginal and minority roots, it's going to be very hard, because, and again, I think for Christian nationalists, that's part of their narrative, is that we have power, we should have the power, and we should be able to use the power. And that is a faulty narrative. I was going to follow up just with Representative Hymes's desire for liberation theology. It's expressed there, because those communities that he was talking about in South America based Christian communities trying to live out these very simple values of love. Both were destroyed by both the El Salvadoran and Nicaraguan and other governments, but also by the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church outlawed them, and they were the ones who were living out the gospel. So it's very complicated.
Yes. Well, as your chief moderator, I have to call time, or at least acknowledge time. We were going to go till 4 o'clock. We have passed that time. And obviously, no pastor, no minister wants to stop the shouting and the praise when it's happening. So I hope that you won't be upset with me about that. But we do need to acknowledge that part of it, so that if there are those who came on with the idea that they would be moving on, we want to acknowledge and thank you for having been here today. But we also would certainly keep the lines open for a continuing conversation so that we can begin to wrap up this conversation. Brittany, we thank you so much for leading this esteemed group through a conversation around religion and where it fits today, given the legacy of Dr. King. So we're very appreciative of that. Jackie, Pastor Jackie, it's always good to see you and Reverend Lingle as well. With that, Apostle Streeter, you are the mother of all of us in this town, and your words have spoken like a hot steel knife on a day when we need to understand what is going on. There are many others who are online right now, and I would offer to Reverend Bush, if he is here, if he has a few words, and then we'll close out. And for those of you who want to remain, we'll leave the line open for a little longer. Reverend Bush?
Yes, are you able to hear me pretty well?
Yes.
Okay, I want to take this moment and to again, just as Brother Hyman just said, I want to thank you as a panel. Thank you, Brittany, for your excellence in dialogue with us and giving us an opportunity to share this way. And I want to thank Imam Al Hassan Kamagte for being with us, and Reverend Mark Lingle, and also Reverend Jackie Gilchrist, and obviously who has been a mother figure for me, Apostle Streeter, for the rawness of her experience, that we all could feel it as she was talking about it. And so, you know, you can't always look at us and tell what we've been through. And but we thank God that we made it somehow, and but by the grace of God. So I want to thank you all for joining us today, and for also our sponsors again, the MLK committee, along with the Concerned Clergy Coalition, and with our Ferguson Library, and then we had some other partners who have joined us in the whole day of celebrations. And I want to say we've had a marvelous day in just looking at the King legacy. And so thank you all for all you've done. Mike.
Thank you, Reverend. Mrs. Anderson is on, and she has decided that she does not want to speak, but her presence. Yes. Mrs.
All
Anderson,
right.
do you want to speak? No? Okay. Because one of the things that we want to have happen is that everyone should have a library card. We need to make sure that all of our young people, so this is the infomercial for the card, but I will also suggest to you, there were several books that I'd chosen for us for today. One is a copy of Speeches of Dr. King. It's called A Call to Conscience. It is a fabulous book. You can get it at the Ferguson Library. But two other items. One is a book by James Cone from Union Theological Seminary. This book is called I said I wasn't going to tell nobody. If you buy this book just for chapter 3 alone on Black liberation theology, it will be worth that. He also has another book that you should take a look at. It's called The Cross and the Lynching Tree. I would recommend it to everyone as we talk about that. As we close out, I am
Mr.
reminded.
Hyman?
Yes.
This is Mrs. Anderson.
Yes, Mrs. Anderson.
I just want to thank everyone. First, thank God, and thank you all so very much, Reverend Bush, Brittany, and everyone for participating. And I just want to say it touched my heart when Reverend Streeter was speaking, because I grew up in the South and I could not go to the library. And Reverend Streeter, thank you for sharing your story with us. On behalf of Alice Knapp, our CEO here at the Ferguson Library, we invite you to come to your library. We have awesome materials. Our staff is awesome. So we're here to serve you. And next year, hopefully we will have a bibliography, but come by the library. We have all kinds of books for everyone. And I usually card everyone before we begin the program, but I didn't do that today. Please get your library cards. Library is power. Library and your cards of wisdom. So thank you so much for the opportunity to serve you as your community services librarian. Thank you all so very much, and God bless.
Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Anderson. And as we close out, Dr. King well understood Luke, the fourth book, or fourth chapter, 18 to 19. The Spirit of the Lord is upon me because he anointed me to preach the good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim release of the captives and the recovering sight to the blind, to set at liberty those who are oppressed. If there is anything about our religion, certainly within the Black church, we must know that it is intertwined with who we are and what we've been and where we want to go. It is not possible to separate those two things of our own liberation and our religion. It is part of who we are as a people. And so that, as Malcolm X said, and Dr. King agreed, Malcolm X said that I would not have a religion or a faith that did not allow me to fight for my freedom. We must all remember that it is important for us in faith that we fight for our freedom, and it has never been more necessary than it is now. Please look around, do not close your eyes to what's happening in our country. Black people have been the conscience of this nation for years. We need to continue to be that, to strive for our own, but to strive also for America. God bless all of you, and thank you so much for being here today.
We who believe in freedom cannot rest. We who believe in freedom cannot rest until it comes. We who believe in freedom cannot rest.
Oh, how can you rest?
We who believe in freedom cannot rest until it comes. Until the killing of black men, black mother, son is as important as the killing of white men, white mother, son. Sing with us. We who believe in freedom cannot rest.
Oh, how can you rest?
We who believe in freedom cannot rest until it comes. The older I get, the better I know that the secret to my going on is with a razor in the hands of the young who dare to run against the storm. Not needing to clutch for power, not needing for the light just to shine on me. I need to be one in the number as we stand against tyranny. But now we who believe in freedom cannot rest.
Don't you rest?
We who believe in freedom cannot rest. You know that struggling myself don't mean a whole lot. I've come to realize that teaching others to stand up and fight is the only way my struggle survives. I'm a woman who speaks in a voice being a boy. And I must be heard. At times I can be quite difficult. About to no man's heart. And that we who believe in freedom and freedom. Oh, don't you rest. We who believe in freedom and freedom. And now one more time now, we who believe in freedom and freedom. I believe, I believe, I believe, I believe, I believe, I believe. Do you believe? Do you believe? Do you believe in freedom?
Let there be peace. Standing for freedom, freedom, till it comes. 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 Standing for freedom, freedom. Feel it come stand up, freedom, freedom, 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 and let it begin. With every deed and word I speak, there is no peace again. Let there be peace on earth, let the moment be now. When every man and woman understands their power, let there be peace. Let there be peace. Let there be peace. Let there be Let there be peace on earth and let it extend to every border near and far. Restore peace again. Let there be peace on earth. Let this be the day when all humanity will raise their voices to say, let there be peace. Let there be peace. Let there be
Thank you. Thank you. Michael, what is the book you said again? You gave the Crossing the Lynching Tree and
yes.
the second book.
Right. The second book was James Cone's Said I Wasn't Going to Tell Nobody.
Okay.
Okay.
That's the one I was looking for.
Right. And so there's several chapters in the book, but for our purposes, chapter 3 is a good one to take a look at. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But as you well know, James Cone is almost like the father of liberation theology.
Of Black liberation theology, he is. Ain't no almost. Yeah. And we lost him about a year and a half ago.
Right. But a fantastic man. I just can't tell you, the idea of the thinking and the thoughts that went through his head, that he said things in places where some other people would have just kept their mouths closed. We all have this thing where we like to say that we're all in the same boat, but there's an acknowledgement that we're all on the same ocean, but some of us are not on the same boat. Some of us have yachts and some of us are in, little paddles and things like that, and canoes, but we're on the same rough seas. And Cone and others recognize that. And we have to acknowledge, what do you do about that when that is in fact the case?
Mhm. All right.
Reverend
All right.
Bush,
Yes, Miss
your
Joy.
friendly librarian will gift you with that book.
Okay, that will be wonderful. That
I'm
will be
sure.
wonderful.
Okay.
Mhm. All right.
And for for other books that you all would like, please don't forget about your local library.
Uh-huh.
Well,
And you can go in now without worrying about the sheriff putting you out.
Right. Now, Mrs. Anderson, I understand that all one needs to do is to mention a book and that you will gift it to a person.
We would, no, I didn't say. Well, we would do the best we can.
Is that the way this works? So
We would do the best we can.
No, I felt that as a personal, kind of,
Yeah.
gift. So I'm thankful for that. Mhm. Well, thank you all again. Thank you, Brittany. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Brittany.
Thank you for
Everyone.
having me. I was just thinking, it sounds like this is more of a part one conversation. It sounds like we need a part two.
Yes, most
You're
definitely.
If you're committing to moderating, yes.
Yes.
Okay. Do I get a free book too?
Absolutely. What would you like? What title would you like?
Oh, let me think about it.
Oh, I can, as a librarian, I can match the person to the book. So I'll give me a chance. I got it. Okay. If you want something special, just check me out here at the library.
Thank you. But no, thank you so much for having me. This was a great conversation. And I do think that this is just the tip of the iceberg. I think we need more of this coming together as a community and discussing a range of topics, just putting it all on the table.
All right. Thank you very much.
All right.
Brittany.
Yes. Yes. Thank you.
Bush and Michael Heyman, thank you. And all my colleagues, thank you for having me.
All right.
I'm going back to work.
Well, we don't want to make this just a one-time thing, so we're hoping
right.
that we'll be back in the future.
Okay. Thank you. Yes.
Talk over today.
All right.
All right.
Bye.
See everybody. Bye-bye.
All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Talk over today.
Yes.
Talk over today.
Oh, Rick, are you trying to say something?
Talk over today.
Oh, thank you too for being here.
Oh, yeah.
Appreciate it so much. Thank
Yeah,
you. Thank you. Yes. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So let's see here. And Michelle Layton, I do see you and I will say hello. It's been a while through COVID, or at least I see the little face there. And I miss hearing your voice and your songs and your singing. So.
Well, it was a blessing, and I believe